Here's something I've been noticing. Everywhere I turn, people are talking about loneliness, not just individuals in my practice, but leaders of organizations, researchers, policymakers. The UK appointed a minister for loneliness. The US Surgeon General called loneliness an epidemic. And yet, we're more connected than ever. We have more ways to reach each other, more platforms, and more networks than ever before. So, what's actually happening? Today, we are going to examine this through three lenses: psychological, philosophical, and the spiritual. And we are going to see how the same pattern of disconnection shows up at every scale of our lives, from the global to the personal to the interior. Because here's what I've learned: when a pattern appears everywhere, it's not a coincidence, it's a system trying to tell us something. I'm Rahul Nair, and this is the Huddle Institute podcast show. Welcome to episode 1. So let's start with what we're actually seeing. The data is striking. In the US, surveys show that more than half of adults report feeling lonely. In Japan, there are estimated to be over 1 million hikikomori, people who've withdrawn from social life entirely. In the UK, loneliness is considered as harmful to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But loneliness isn't just individual. Look at the scale of nations. We are fragmenting into increasingly isolated communities. Political polarization means we are sorting ourselves into echo chambers, unfriending people who think differently from us, and avoiding entire topics at family gatherings. Look at organizations. Despite having open offices and collaboration tools, people report feeling disconnected from colleagues, from purpose, from meaning in their work. The phrase quiet quitting captured something real. People who are actually present but not really there. And look at relationships. Couples living under the same roof can feel profoundly alone. Parents are, in many ways, exhausted by the performance of parenting. Teenagers are surrounded by followers but starved for genuine connection. Same pattern, different scales. Now, here's what's interesting. We keep trying to solve this with more connection tools, more apps, more platforms, more ways to reach out. And it's not working. In fact, it might just be making things worse. Why? Because we're trying a we're trying to treat a systemic problem with individualistic solutions. We're trying to fix the symptom without understanding the system. So let's dig a little deeper. First, the psychological lens. How are we wired, and why does this hurt so much? Humans are fundamentally social creatures. This isn't something poetic, it's just neurobiological. Our brains literally developed in relationship. A baby's brain is shaped by the quality of its early attachments. Our nervous systems regulate through co regulation. In other words, we calm down in the presence of calm others, and we become activated in the presence of activated others. Loneliness, then, isn't just an emotion, it's a kind of a signal, like hunger or thirst. It's your system telling you something vital is missing. And just as physical pain does, social pain, social pain activates the same regions of the brain. Rejection and exclusion hurt, literally. But here's where it gets complicated. Loneliness creates a feedback loop. When we feel lonely, our brain goes into what researchers call a self preservation mode, quote unquote. We become more vigilant to social threats. We interpret ambiguous interactions more negatively. We withdraw protect to protect ourselves from further rejection, and that withdrawal creates more loneliness. This is a reinforcing feedback loop. The more lonely we feel, the more we behave in ways that increases our loneliness. Add to this the quality of connection. We've substituted what psychologists call weak ties, I mean, likes, comments, superficial interactions, etc., for strong ties, which are basically deep, vulnerable, consistent relationships. And our nervous systems know the difference. So we've replaced strong ties with weak ties, and our nervous systems know the difference. You can have 1,000 Instagram followers and still feel profoundly alone because your attachment system is not getting what it needs: presence, attunement, someone who truly sees you. There's also the exhaustion factor. Many of us are so depleted by work, by information overload, by the sheer demands of modern life that we don't have the energy for the kind of presence real connection actually requires. We're together but absent, physically proximate but psychologically elsewhere. And then there's what psychologists call pluralistic ignorance. We all feel lonely, but we think we're the only ones. Everyone's performing fine on social media, so we hide our struggles, which means we're all isolated in our isolation, not realizing it's collective. So, psychologically, we're caught in a trap, wired for connection, living in conditions that make genuine connection harder, creating feedback loops that amplify our disconnection. But, but why are we living in these conditions in the first place? That's where philosophy comes in. Philosophically, let's ask a question. What assumptions have we made about how life should be lived? What have we valued? What have those values cost us? Western modernity valorizes individualism, the self made person. Independence is the ultimate goal. I don't need anyone as a badge of honor. We've structured entire societies around this: nuclear families instead of extended ones, geographic mobility for career, transactional relationships, and consumerism that promises individual fulfillment. But here's the philosophical tension: we are trying to be autonomous individuals while remaining fundamentally interdependent beings. And that contradiction is tearing us apart. The philosopher Charles Taylor talks about the buffered self, the modern self that's sealed off, self sufficient, defended against the world. Contrast this with the porous self of earlier eras, understood as embedded in relationships, community, cosmos. We've gained certain freedoms for sure: the ability to choose our own path, to break from oppressive traditions, to define ourselves. But we've also lost something: the sense of inherent belonging, the web of mutual obligation, the understanding that we are part of something larger. There's also a philosophical question about what we owe each other. We've moved from communities of obligation to communities of choice. You choose your friends, your associations. This has upsides, of course. You're not stuck with toxic relationships just because of proximity. But it also means relationships become more fragile. If I'm only choosing you because you meet my needs, what happens when that changes? Every relationship becomes contingent, provisional. And that creates a subtle anxiety. Am I valued for who I am or what I provide? Then there is the question of meaning. If connection is instrumental, I connect with you to get something, it fundamentally changes the nature of the connection. You become a means to my ends. But traditional wisdom across cultures suggests that genuine connection is an end in itself. It's intrinsically valuable, not because of what it gets you, but because it's part of what it means to live well. The Greeks called this philia, deep friendship, not utility, but mutual regard and shared life. The African concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are. The understanding that personhood is itself relational. We've somehow largely lost this philosophical framework, and in its place, we have LinkedIn networking, transactional relationships. What's in it for me? Quote unquote. And here's what's profound: this isn't just about individual choices, these are structural, systemic issues. The economy requires geographic mobility, which fragments communities. Work demands consume the time we normally give to relationships. Housing costs force people to live farther from family. Technology companies profit from engagement, not necessarily genuine connection. In other words, loneliness isn't a personal failing, it's a predictable outcome of how we've organized society based on certain philosophical assumptions about individualism, autonomy, and value. So, if we want to address loneliness, we cannot just tell people to connect more. We have to question the underlying philosophy and the systems it's created. And this brings us to the spiritual lens. Spiritually, let's go even deeper. What does loneliness reveal about our fundamental relationship to existence itself? Across wisdom traditions, there is a teaching that separation is an illusion. At the deepest level, we're not separate, isolated selves. We are interconnected, interdependent, part of one whole living system. In Advaita Vedanta, which I've studied extensively, this is expressed as Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. The self you think you are and the ultimate reality are not two separate things. In Buddhism, it's Indra's net, a cosmic web where each jewel reflects all the others. You cannot remove one without affecting the whole. In Christian mysticism, it's the body of Christ. Many members, one body. In indigenous wisdom, it's the understanding that we are relatives to all beings, two legged, four legged, winged, rooted. The spiritual dimension of loneliness, then, is existential disconnection, not just from other people, but from this fundamental sense of belonging to something larger. When we forget our interconnection, when we believe ourselves to be separate, isolated egos competing for resources, we suffer. Not because we are doing something wrong, but because we are out of alignment with reality itself. And here's what's fascinating: this isn't just mysticism, it's biology. Ecologists like Fritjof Capra show us that life itself is relational. No organism exists in isolation. Your body is an ecosystem of trillions of cells cooperating, of microbes essential to your survival, of breath, of food, and water connecting you to the whole biosphere. You are quite literally not separate. But we've forgotten this. We've created a culture that treats individuals as discrete units, competing rather than cooperating, consuming rather than contributing. And that forgetting creates a spiritual loneliness, a sense that something essential is missing, even when our practical needs are met. It's why people can have successful careers, functional relationships, material comfort, and still feel empty. Because we're disconnected from the experience of being part of something larger, something sacred, something that doesn't depend on our individual achievement or effort. The spiritual response to loneliness then is not just to form more relationships, it's to remember our fundamental interconnection, to cultivate what some traditions call interbeing, the recognition that your well being and mine are inseparable. This isn't about believing something, it's about experiencing it through practices of presence, compassion, and service, in moments of awe, when the boundaries of self momentarily dissolve, through a genuine encounter with another where you're not performing or defending but simply meeting. So now let's pull back a little bit and look at the system. What we are seeing is a reinforcing feedback loop at multiple levels, as system thinkers call it. At the individual level, you have loneliness leading to self protection, leading to withdrawal, leading to more loneliness. At the societal level, the social level, you have disconnection leading to digital substitution, leading to shallow connections, leading to more disconnection. At the structural level, you have economic demands leading to community fragmentation, leading to loneliness, leading to productivity loss, leading to more economic pressure. These loops are connected. Your individual loneliness is entangled with social fragmentation, which is entangled with economic structures, which is entangled with cultural values. And here's what's crucial: you cannot solve a systemic problem by only working at one level. If you tell a lonely person, just go make friends, then you're essentially ignoring the structural barriers, like, for example, lack of time, lack of spaces for genuine gathering, lack of cultural support for non-productive relationship time. If you create community programs, on the other hand, but do not address the economic pressures pulling people apart, well, then these programs are likely to struggle. If you change economic policy but do not shift the cultural valorization of individualism, then people will still feel they should be self sufficient. This is a system, and systems require systemic responses. Donella Meadows, the great systems thinker, taught that the most powerful leverage points in a system are the following: one, the paradigm or mindset out of which the system arises; two, the goals of the system; and three, the ability to self organize. Right now, our paradigm is individualism. Our goal is individual success, and we've lost much of our capacity to self organize into genuine communities. What if we shifted the paradigm to interdependence? What if the goal became collective flourishing? What if we created structures that supported rather than undermined our capacity to connect? That's the conversation we need to have. So, given all this, where does your agency live? What becomes possible? At the personal level, you can recognize loneliness as a signal, not a failure. Build practices of genuine presence with others, which means phone down and attention full. You can prioritize depth over breadth in relationships, practice vulnerability, let someone actually see you for a change. And then finally, you can even engage in weak tie connections that often become bridges. Chat with the barista who makes you the early morning coffee, greet your neighbors. At the relational level, have honest conversations about this. Name the collective loneliness. Create rituals of connection, regular gatherings, shared meals, meaningful traditions. Practice receiving, not just giving. Let people matter to you. Commit to showing up, even when it's inconvenient. At the community level, create or join spaces for genuine gathering, not networking, not consuming, but being together. Support local institutions that foster connection. Advocate for policies that make community possible: housing, public spaces, work life balance. And at the spiritual level, practice remembering your interconnection, meditation, nature, awe, service. Ask, where am I already connected but not noticing? Cultivate what mystics call the practice of the presence. being fully where you are. None of these solves, quote unquote, loneliness in the long run. Because loneliness, like hunger, is part of being human, a signal that calls us back into relationship. But they expand your agency. You see, they expand your agency. They create conditions that make a genuine connection more possible. And that matters because your personal healing and the healing of the world are not separate projects. They're the same project at different scales. So let me come back to where we started. Loneliness is an epidemic, but it's not necessarily a disease to be cured. It's a symptom of disconnection at every level, every scale. From the philosophical assumptions underlying our society to the way you spent your evening yesterday. The pattern is the same. The self protective withdrawal increases isolation. The substitution of quantity over quality. The forgetting that we were never separate to begin with. And the response is also the same at every scale, remembering, reconnecting, rebuilding the web of relationships that make us human. This isn't easy. It requires presence in a world of distraction, vulnerability in a culture of performance, commitment in an age of optionality. But it's possible, and it starts with seeing the pattern. Here's a question to carry with you this week. Where in your life have you substituted performance for presence? And what would it mean to risk genuine connection? To let someone actually see you? Where in your life have you substituted performance for presence? And what would it actually mean to risk genuine connection? To let someone actually see you? I'm Rahul Nair, and this has been the Huddle Institute podcast show. If this resonated, subscribe and share it with someone you care about. Next Tuesday, we'll examine climate anxiety and the paralysis of scale. Until then, take a breath. Notice who you're connected to. And maybe, just maybe, reach out. Ciao for now.